Hello, this is Russell Dobular filling in for Jimmy Dore on vacation on the road, going to see everything, going all the places. We have some amazing guests tonight. We're going to have some excellent conversations with Professor Zenkus and then with Nick Cruz, and then we're going to get into what's going on with flock cameras a little bit, Maha betrayed again, and the Tyler Robinson case. So first up, Anthony Zenkus is a licensed clinical social worker and adjunct lecturer at Columbia University School of Social Work. With nearly 30 years of experience with youth and family services, he is a recognized expert on trauma, family violence, and the impacts of income inequality and racism on the brains and behavior of children, having delivered a notable TEDx talk on the subject in 2016. Beyond his academic and clinical work, Zenkus is an activist who has been involved in Occupy Wall Street, the Climate Reality Project, and the fight for 15. Please welcome Professor Anthony Zenkus. How are you, Prof?
Russell, I'm good. You know, fight for 15. That was, I have to open this top button. It looks silly. That was, that was a dozen years ago. You know,
yeah.
15 won't even, you know, to keep a couple of trips on the subway these days. So, yeah.
Well, so what do you think it should be now?
living wage, federal minimum wage, at least what people should be fighting for is minimum of 25 an hour federally, and states like New York would have to have it higher, as states always do. Like many states adjust above it, but I won't vote for any candidate, and I don't think we should promote any candidate, and it should be a red line in the sand who doesn't push for an immediate living wage of at least $25 an hour, because you can't live on it. I mean, even as a single person, let alone if you have kids, forget it.
Okay, now what about people who say that's going to destroy business and people won't be able to stay in business? They're going to go bankrupt if you make them pay that.
Well,
People at the bottom won't be able to get jobs. These jobs are for high school kids. What do you say to those things?
well, first of all, there are families being supported by their high school kids, so there's that, But the reality, well, first of all, if you can't pay your workers, your business model is not good. But we are giving money hand over fist to Ukraine, to Israel, to everybody we want, to defense contract. We could supplement small businesses, give them tax credits or anything like that, where they can hire people. I mean, it just takes the will and the decision. But if people are telling us, like, and I know, a lot of the audience agrees with this, but if our economy is based on paying people a sub-living wage,
right,
then that's a fucked economy. Like,
right.
That's not an economy.
Right, right. That's a system that just doesn't work.
Yeah, I can't believe you would suggest that, Russell. Okay.
Why are you doing that to me, man? Now there's going to be 50 nerds clipping that, saying Russ Dobular against $25 wage.
It's my fault. Anyway.
Okay. Last time I talked to you was during the crazy days at Columbia. That was around the time. That was when I still went to LA to guest host for Jimmy.
Wow.
I was actually flying into New York as the police raided Hamilton Hall and watching it happen on CNN.
Holy
on the screen on the plane.
And we call it Hins Hall. So
what's that?
Hins Hall.
That's right.
It's been renamed. Right. And I still refer to it as that, only that. But that was insane. I mean, the amount of police that were there, if you could see what they had on 116th Street, like where the protests all were, but there were hundreds of cops. I've never seen anything like it. It was insane.
Right. They were all up. That's Amsterdam Avenue there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were all lined up. I saw it on CNN as I'm flying into JFK. So about a year ago, it's about a year ago now, they came to an agreement here. Columbia University to pay $200 million in settlement with the Trump administration. Let's read a little bit of this. The White House's decision led Columbia to enact campus rule changes. This is the decision being the White House withheld $400 million in federal funding. So Columbia is supposed to pay this over 3 years now, this $200 million for supposedly not protecting their Jewish students. So they've enacted campus rule changes demanded by the administration, including the reorganization of its Middle Eastern Studies Department and hiring a team of special officers empowered to remove students from campus and make arrests. The agreement codifies many changes the college has already announced and includes that a jointly selected independent monitor will be appointed to assess implementation of the agreement. Some of those adjustments include disciplining students who were part of the encampment on the university's campus as part of the Gaza protests, requiring protesters to show campus ID, not allowing face masks during demonstrations, providing greater oversight of student groups, and an expansion of officers on campus. Now, I just walked by there a couple of days ago, and it's very depressing.
Yeah.
It's just been crushed. It's just completely silent over there. And if you went over there, I shot some on the ground coverage during the height of the protest. It seems like they've just really wrung the life out of it. And then to top it all off, just this January, you got yourself a new president. This is from Columbia University, Apartheid Divest. Columbia just announced Jennifer Mnuchin as its new president. As chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, she called riot police to beat up and arrest students for their Gaza solidarity encampment. She'll fit in perfectly with the rest of the school's fascist administration. So, hey, you're on the inside over there. What's it like? What's it like after all of this?
Am I on the inside? So, just in full disclosure,
you're able to get past the gates.
I am able to get past the gates.
They're not letting me in.
No, and that's they should though.
Well, they won't.
Let's rewind a little bit. When the student encampment started in April, is April 17th.
I got a freeze. Are you guys seeing that?
Oh, sorry about that. And I tried to put myself, see what's happening right now? You can hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
all right. Now you're better.
No, I'm saying you can hear that horn. Welcome to New York, everybody.
Oh yeah. Well,
and apologies to the audience about that. That could go on for another minute. Good.
You got lucky.
I would say every 3 days their car goes off. I have no idea what's going on. They've now had that car for 4 years. So going back to April of 2024, what the students were looking to do was the encampment, a nonviolent protest, which was legal according to the school's rules. They were camping on a part of the quad known as a free speech zone. It's literally dedicated to that, right? Here's the thing. That was done in the model of the South African divestment movement from the 1980s, which worked. Right. That started on campuses like Columbia, spread like wildfire all over the country. After like dozens of schools divested from companies doing business and profiting from business in South Africa because of their apartheid regime, all of a sudden you saw municipalities like Chicago and New York and San Francisco start to divest their pension funds. When that happened, the dominoes started to fall. Within a couple of years, South African apartheid regime dissolved itself because it could not exist. That example, what the students followed, was what not only the trustees of the university, but what the pro-Israel lobby and most politicians in both parties were terrified of. They needed to crush that movement. Right. And, they physically crushed the movement. So absolutely the campus is different. You don't see protests like that. I've had students say to me, I thought we weren't allowed to talk about Gaza in class. I thought that wasn't allowed. I don't teach geopolitics. I teach social.
Right.
But, anybody can bring anything they want up in class if it's relevant to the discussion. And of course, I'm teaching social work. So, there's article upon article been written about the children of Gaza prior to the genocide being the most traumatized children in the world. So it's absolutely relevant to social work. But absolutely, the atmosphere is different there. They want to make sure that that nothing percolates up like this again. But here's the thing. That reaction was so over the top. They suspended students. They expelled students. Students were, if you live in on-campus housing or off-campus housing too, what ends up happening is if you get expelled or suspended, you lose your housing. There were students that were made homeless. And that night, I was in group chats with faculty trying to house students who were homeless. They didn't know. They went back to their dorm room and all their belongings were in the hallway. So this was happening left and right. You can do all that, but you can't kill an idea.
Right.
So I think that response being so over the top. I just spoke with a former student from the School of Social Work, who was one of the initial people involved in the encampment. And Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier was just, and again, well, I'm sure we'll get into the electoral thing.
We are. I have her up next. Yeah.
Okay. She was one of the students at that encampment.
Right.
Okay. So, I truly believe this. This is the thing that allows me to get up every morning. And that is that their over-the-top response, they're being terrified by these protests, and they should have been, because these protests were working. They went global within a week, right?
Right.
The encampment thing, just like Occupy did, right? And they crushed that too. They can't kill it, and it's kind of like two people playing chess, and the one side knows they're losing in like 6 moves,
right?
But they keep playing anyway.
Right.
I think that's what's on the other side. I do believe divestment will happen. The student I just spoke to, we were just talking about it, and she said, it'll happen, but Columbia won't be the first. It'll be one of the later universities to do it. But it's going to happen because people are just repulsed by what's been going on. So, did we lose this battle? I mean, kind of, but just doing the thing got the idea out there. They think they won, but
how does the faculty feel? Like, how did the faculty feel about the university deciding to cave to Trump? Because you got a couple of things going on here. I think, in general, I would imagine among the majority of academics, Trump is absolutely despised, and I would think that academics in general are protective of their prerogatives.
For those that don't, I'm sorry?
I would imagine most academics are protective of their prerogatives. So between those two things, I would think for most of the faculty at Columbia, that was not a popular decision.
Well, I don't know most of the faculty at Columbia. I can only know the ones that were in my circle, but I can tell you there are faculty that are okay with it, because there are faculty that support what the United States and Israel are doing.
Right.
But the ones that are my colleagues, the people I've spoken with, I mean, we're disturbed at it. But like the federal government will hold these contracts over the head of the university.
Right.
And they'll say, we'll withdraw the contracts. And side note, if anyone in the audience doesn't know this, the federal government's not just giving money to the universities. They have like medical research contracts, like cancer research.
Right.
You pull stuff like that hurts everybody. But I mean, Trump doesn't care. He just wants the optics of being tough on the protesters. So, the puppeteer Marion Wright Adelson, Marion Adelson.
Miriam. Yeah.
I'm thinking of Marion Wright Edelman, who was actually a person, and she was in the Clinton administration. No, Miriam Adelson, and all the other donors. Remember when Trump ran the first time, he didn't have a ton of corporate donors. He used a lot of his money. People were like, who's this new guy? Whoa, he had a lot of corporate people behind him this time. And it was the pro-Israel, pro-genocide, pro-war defense contractor lobby. Do you hear this? Anyway.
I mean, I live here, so I'm not particularly put off by that.
What ends up happening? Yeah, but look at that room. You have to invite me over. That's very cool. I would like to hang out there, especially with the robot.
Anytime. The robot, I have to get 2.4 gigahertz to control it.
For the love of
God.
God.
It actually interacts and speaks, but I don't have the right bandwidth.
There are real friends that will talk to you too, Russell. So
this came from China, though.
On your
will
trip?
Real friends spy on me from China?
I love it. There's something that I did not know, but I recently found out, being on the inside. Okay, here's.
You froze.
Yeah.
All right.
Pretty soon
you're unfrozen. Say it again.
Pretty soon I can see when it happens, so I'll pause. Pretty soon into the negotiations with the university, which were being mediated by Mahmoud Khalil, for those that don't know. That's why the administration hated him, and who is like one of the nicest, most reasonable, non-hateful people you could know, right? Like this guy is not like vitriolic or anything. And during those negotiations, the Palestinian students, a decision was made that those that were Palestinian or had family in Palestine should be centered at the front of those negotiations. And I thought that was correct. And I found out that the administration offered full ride scholarships to them. I don't have independent verification. I have somebody who was in the encampment tell me this. Mm-hmm. They were offered full ride scholarships at Columbia to stop. They were offered free tuition and the ability to attend Columbia's campus, which they were setting up in Tel Aviv at the Tel Aviv Global Center. First of all, not understanding the trustees, the administration that offered this, those students wouldn't have been allowed there.
Right.
They're not allowed there. So the school did not understand this issue at all, nor did it want to, I guess. Scholarships for students, then they were going to offer full rides for scholarships for students from the West Bank and Gaza. So, I mean, and the students rejected this because their point was, you are investing in companies which are bombing our families, and then you want to bring those people here to attend Columbia. This does not make sense, and they refused it. And there are people on the board of trustees at Columbia who are executives at defense corporations who are making a ton of cash off the genocide, off the war now in Iran and Lebanon. So, I mean, this was really, it was pretty disgusting. Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned Daria Liza. So this is an article from 2024, right after they raided Hind Hall, as you're calling it.
Yeah.
Why are police in riot gear? So funny enough, she was interviewed for this article at that time. Daria Liza Villa-Xavier, an Afro-Latina alumni of Columbia University's class of 2016 and former member of Students for Justice in Palestine, managed to stay on campus during the lockdown. She was among the women blocking the entrance to Hind Hall. They sang "We Shall Not Be Moved" amid the clanging of metal as police threw furniture, she tells Time. Police pushed her and others to the floor. I felt totally helpless at that point. It was quite horrific, she says. There was nothing calm or organized about the situation. Villa-Xavier says she has bruises on her legs and arms. Once arrested students arrived on the bus, they sang all the way to the police station to calm themselves down, she says. All right, so now you've got the remarkable situation that she is almost certain to be the congresswoman representing Columbia University. Do you think that's going to make any difference? And do you feel that this represents a meaningful change in the Democratic Party? Because a lot of people are very suspicious of that and see it as the graveyard for these kinds of movements, right? Once she's in, they appropriate her, they threaten her with pictures of her family, whatever they do once they get you there. You know, who knows what Pelosi whispered to AOC on that Iron Dome vote.
Oh, yeah.
She was never the same after that. Who knows? So what do you think? What do you think about all that?
I think those are two different questions as far as what it means about the Democratic Party. But first, with Daria Liza winning, I can't help but have schadenfreude about that. Like, sure. I am happy that a student who was physically abused by the NYPD, which was unnecessarily invited on campus by an administration that did not want to negotiate in good faith with these students, who were nonviolent, right? And protests have happened at schools like Columbia forever. This is nothing new. That a student, and if I remember correctly, her role, she was one of the students standing outside of Hind's Hall. kind of as a human blockade to prevent the cops from going up. And by the way, I'm not saying, you know, what she engaged in, but this is one of the things that I had heard. There are a number of those students that literally, one of the students was thrown down concrete steps. So the NYPD didn't come in to play. They were violent. I'm sure the orders from above were like, do what you need to do, bust some heads, make this happen. The fact that she is now in Congress representing that district is a sweet thing. And is it possible that we can enjoy that moment just for a little bit? Because, and I think what this does is it illustrates that whole idea that I said earlier, which is they cannot kill this idea. And I am sure there are people on the board of trustees or wherever in the administration of Columbia that are extremely unpleased about that outcome. I don't know. I'm not speaking for anyone. What does it mean in the broader sense? Okay, so let's get the elephant out of the room. People are afraid she's going to be another AOC, right? And here's the deal. AOC wasn't an activist before. AOC, in my opinion, cosplayed a leftist, right? She wasn't putting her body on the line, getting arrested, doing stuff like this, and then decided to go into government. That is not her story arc at all. This was somebody who did not have any idea about going on to become a representative, but was radicalized by what happened to her and her fellow students during a genocide, and decided, I need to speak up. I need to do something.
Right.
Those are two different things. So listen, I've been wrong before. I don't believe, though, that somebody of that caliber is going to be co-opted. I just heard Claire Valdez in an interview. I forget who with. She was one of the other congressmen that's
in Brooklyn.
Right. And she was unequivocal in the past couple of days, like, no. We're not reforming ICE. We have to abolish ICE. There needs to be a full arms embargo on Israel. And then when asked about, it was Daria Lisa and Claire, I believe, who said this, would they vote for Jeffries? They said, well, we have to have a conversation with him, but we're not voting for anybody that takes corporate money. Which, like, this is not what AOC did. I know why people feel burned by her, because she's a fraud. AOC.
Right.
These folks here, Claire Valdez was arrested at least twice, once outside protesting Israel's genocide of Palestine, once out.
You froze. All right. Come on back. There you go.
Yeah, the folks that took over Hamilton Hall and renamed it Hins Hall. I think this is a different ilk of people. What does it mean for the Democrat Party?
All right. Hang on. Let me share something that you just shared out before we move into that. So you retweeted this. This is originally from Jacobin. Mayor Zoran Mamdani just announced a $2.1 million settlement against Walgreens and 3 other companies for violating worker protection laws. The 4 companies will pay restitution to more than 1,600 workers. This brings the total restitution paid to NYC workers under Mamdani's watch to $10.1 million. Now, there has been, I got to say, on the left, broadly termed, a lot of consternation and debate about this, particularly on the, again, broadly termed radical left or post-Democratic Party left. There's been really a lot of confusion about how to react to Mamdani. You have this right after a rent freeze, right after the PETA tear tax got passed, and yet a lot of people will point out he kept on Jessica Tisch. His rhetoric around Venezuela and Cuba has been very, very mealy-mouthed, to say the least. His budget is kind of a magic trick. He kind of balanced the budget by deferring pension payments. A lot of people feel his housing plan incorporates private developers to such an extent that you're not going to really be able to get away from this vicious circle of rising rent. So all that said, what have you thought about his tenure? And going back to the original question, do you think it's worth supporting certain Democratic candidates in certain places, or or is it the George Carlin thing? Don't vote for them. You're only going to encourage them.
We miss George. I think Zoran Mamdani will be a good mayor for New York City, and I'm qualifying that and narrowing that as what I'm saying. I think he'll be potentially a very good mayor. What I've seen in the first 6 months has been better than I expected, because I didn't expect these things to happen so quickly, including the rent freeze. I thought that would be like maybe the end of year one. This is all good. I have friends that live in rent stabilized apartments who can now stay here. What it isn't, I mean, their rents are still too high.
Right.
So it's already tough for them to be here, but to know like, oh, maybe we can hang out another 2 years. They've got kids. So I think he's going to do great things. They're going to do the city-owned grocery store in Hunts Point, the Bronx.
Right.
That's going to open in 27. All of these things are good. And he will be a good mayor for New York. If he was running for Congress or the Senate, right, the House or the Senate, and he was saying things like he said about Venezuela or Cuba, I would be talking about it, pretty regularly, because I disagree with it. And, I actually think he's in a position where, first of all, I don't believe he believes what he said. I think he felt he had to say those things, and I'm not making an excuse. And my response, if anybody on his team is listening, he's got leverage now. He does not have to do that. Right. And I think what the people on the left want, regardless of the party, is a champion who's just going to be like, screw it. I'm saying anything I want, which is why I like what I'm hearing from Daria Lisa Chevalier and from Claire Valdez, which is unapologetic. Right. And that's what people need. Ultimately, does that mean the Democratic Party is saved? No. I think it's doomed. But being a New Yorker, obviously, I'm happy that we have someone who is centering the working class in their policy. And these are real policies that are going to make, just the fact they just passed this thing, lower fares on buses and subways for people of lower income. That fantastic.
Right.
However, it should all be free. And by the way, yeah, we can afford it. Ultimately, Marx talked about this. He said on the journey to full communism, there will be what he called lower socialism, depending on the translation. And that was that you would still be in a market economy with a whole bunch of remnants of capitalism, but it would be more worker-centered. And that was one of the steps. So I would encourage people to think of the longer game here. This doesn't solve the problems.
You froze. Andrew's going to have quite an editing job. Okay, start again. This doesn't solve the problems. Go ahead.
It doesn't solve the problems of the Democratic Party. However, I believe the election of these folks is a good thing. And one of the things that I think is important is that not everybody's where, say, you and I are. We're probably not in the same place, but we're pretty similar. Okay.
I'd say so. This is Spectrum messing with us, man.
I was active in the Democratic Party for a while. It took me a while in my life to get where I am. Not everybody is where I am or you are. And one of the things that's going to bring them there is the stuff that happened to us, believing in it and then being disappointed.
Right.
And I believe just creating that discrepancy where people are like, hey, I thought we were going to have an arms embargo. What's going on? And seeing it fail, will radicalize more people. It's going to take time. So I think there's a lot of value to these candidacies. And I'm also interested to see what Daria Lisa and Claire Valdez do when they get to Congress, because I just don't see them as an AOC at all. That's just my take.
Okay. So one of the reasons I wanted to have you and then Nick on is you both have really interesting perspectives on the political moment. So the Democratic Party is not a solution. I think you believe, as I do, and tell me if I'm wrong, that if you got a guy who brands himself a socialist doing things like rent freeze and people like it, that's a good thing. If you want something more radical, you want a guy like that to ease people into having a conversation about going further. But I think a lot of people feel rightly, by the time you have enough reform with that kind of incremental approach, we're going to have collapsed into fascism before you ever get there. Like, what do you recommend for people to do to move the ball forward at a moment like this? I mean, I don't have the answers. I don't think anyone does. But what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I think any revolutionary look at what needs to happen to transform this society in the United States and then globally has to be a multi-pronged approach, right? So this involves things like street protest, boycotts, strikes, nonviolent civil disobedience, but that's also direct action, right? Not just performative, and electoralism. And I think I do not believe electoralism will save us, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to look at its usefulness. One of the things that matters is right now, 77% of Democrats have an unfavorable view of Israel. Right. And there are candidates running who are leading in polls or tied in polls who are saying we need an arms embargo. I don't take AIPAC funds. You did not see that even 2 or 3 years ago. And there is value to it. I believe also that whole creating discrepancy thing is that when people start to see that government can deliver, it could get them to the point of becoming involved and then eventually radicalized when they say, next time the Democrats come up and say, I'm sorry, we can't extend the child tax credit, there's going to be a whole bunch of people who weren't paying attention before who were going to say, yes, you can. Right. No, you don't have to give tens of billions of dollars to Israel, Ukraine, NATO, whatever. So I think there's value to it. The danger is, and I've heard Nick talk about this. I'm not speaking for him, but the whole idea when he was on Savvy's show was last night about the pressure valve. The danger is to allow electoralism to lead. It can't lead. Right. It's not the solve. And it can't be the solve, but I believe it's part of a broader program. And you see my thing here, generals. This is from Occupy. Right. Wow. Around my house. So that was May Day after Occupy from the fall of 2011 when it started. Yeah. And, I hear people talking about general strikes. That would be great. But the bottom line is those things start organically and then they catch on. And I believe if you pull the lens back, we're in a good place because more people are paying attention and more people are radicalized than ever before. So we need to utilize the moment, and education, I believe, is a really big thing through mutual aid. And that's stuff Revolutionary Blackout Network does all the time. Right. Mutual aid. And I think that's a vital part of it. You can't not do it.
All right. So I'm going to end on maybe a downer. Maybe a downer. Here's the Democratic Party counterpoint, and this is from your own feed. You shared this out. So the Dems have revealed their big idea now, Project 2029. We haven't seen all of it. They've just released the first couple points here. It's from Nicholas Wu. First major policy proposal, an online child safety plan, narrowing Section 230, banning social media for kids under 16, promoting phone-free childhoods, and more. already backed by Cory Booker, Mickey Sherrill, Randy Weingarten, and Jonathan Haidt. Let's look a little bit at they released a second point. There's a little bit from Newsweek on this. The full agenda will be released next year, but its first policy idea is kids over clicks, citing growing feelings of loneliness and alienation among young people and the addictive pattern of social use by the time they finish middle school. The group suggested the introduction of new restrictions on social media for children under 16 and bell-to-bell cell phone bans in school. Most notably, the group goes after tech companies, calling for lawmakers to narrow protections under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act that shield platforms from some liability. It wants to make clear that companies are not protected from lawsuits stemming from AI-generated content, paid ads, illegal content, or activity. In other words, loophole you could drive a censorship truck through. New rules should be created to regulate the use of AI chatbots in general, the group argues, clarifying and reinforcing users' privacy protections. On Monday, the group released a second policy concerning a proposed crackdown on the annoyance economy, or the elimination of what Americans pay in time, fees, and irritation every day, while engaging with health insurance companies, airlines, and other businesses. Okay, so you responded to this overall proposal. Medicare for all? No. A living wage of at least $25, a federal housing guarantee, abolishing ICE? Nope. It's digital ID for the internet. Hooray. Cue the supportive near attendant tweet in 3, 2, 1. Now, this kind of small bore school uniforms politics for the Democrats, it was really pioneered by Bill Clinton, who was lauded as a political genius for inventing what was thought of as this post-Cold War, post-partisan politics that would focus on these kinds of small managerial, technocratic management kind of issues. And it's all the Democrats continue to offer, even after these primary victories should be terrifying them. But these are the people who still run the party. So what do you do? Like, it seems like there are so many Cory Bookers in that party. By the time you overrun them with Daria Lizzas, we're going to be dead. I mean, what do you think?
Well, the first thing is Bill Clinton did all that stuff. Let's give him credit. In between flights on the Lolita Express.
Right.
It's not easy to do.
That is
a lot, and trips to the island. It's a big schedule. Here's the thing.
Multitasking.
I'm glad they're doing this because I don't remember her name. Who's that normie Dem woman? She's got blonde hair and she's got a podcast. She's kind of like
Jennifer Welch.
Yeah. Center normie Dem.
Everyone's favorite radicalized soccer mom.
What exactly? And that represents something to me. They are going to look at this and they're going to laugh. This is perfect. And of course, Cory Booker's an idiot. Like, he's just an idiot. And his ilk. This is what they're coming up with now. This is what I mean. Like, I do believe that there will be a transformation in this country. I don't think the Democrats are going to lead it. And no, we don't have time to pepper Congress with Daria Liza after Daria Liza and all that. Apologies, Daria Liza. We keep using your name as an example. Yeah. but it's a good name. But here's the thing. I think it creates that discrepancy. I think people are hungry for something. And those of us who are not jaded, right, that Jennifer Welch, they're like, wait a second, what are you doing? And that's good. Because here's the reality. We know the Republicans have no answers for the economy, for foreign policy that are tolerable. They're having problems on their own side. Theo Vaughn and those folks, they lost Tucker Carlson. Like, this is a big deal. And on our side.
Did they, or is he just going to back J.D. Vance?
I don't know. I know. J.D. Vance is Peter Thiel boy. Peter Thiel Don't even. So look at that. Look at a photo of that man and think, should he have power over anybody? He's a freak. But the bottom line is, but it's their audiences. Candace's audience, Tucker's audience, and a lot of people watch Jimmy from different, political audiences, which is important. I think that you can't put the horse back in the barn after the something or other. Like, you can't close the barn door after the horse is out. I think the real piece here, the Epstein files, should not be underestimated. People are like, holy crap. And just because there hasn't been any fallout politically from it yet, we know who they are. And this is what they're giving us. No cell phones under 16. First of all, there's going to be a rebellion. That ain't going to happen. If you're a parent of a kid, it's not going to work, right? You're not going to talk about ICE. They killed 2 people in the street.
Right.
And so what I'm hoping is enough converted soccer moms are going to be pissed off where we don't sound like the crazies and the radicals anymore. We did a few years ago. We don't now. Everything takes time, and I'm not an incrementalist. That's not my argument. I'm saying people are waking up, and that's good. The Democratic Party is fucked because I was pretty shocked that they didn't lie and say they would do something like extend the child tax credit, which I know they do.
Right.
This is bizarre. It's all they have. It shows that they're out of ideas. They're literally circling the drain right now. They don't know what to do. And I think the Israel thing has put them in that place where, like, what do we do? Like, that's who we are. We are all that. Everything that's happened in Gaza and West Bank and Lebanon, they're all for it. But their voters aren't.
Well, that's the problem that they always have facing off with Republicans. In the end, what their base wants, they can't do without losing their donors.
And now the base is awake. So hopefully that means something. But
all right, Professor Zenkus, thank you very much. I will invite you over, man. We'll hang out.
Absolutely.
We'll play with. Hang on, I got it. Since you mentioned it.
Yes. What's the robot's name? Does it have her name?
Not yet, but he's gonna co-host once I figure out how to make him work.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, because you know what? Not for nothing, Keaton. Seriously, and that it's cheaper. It's cheaper than an actual.
Hello, I'm Robot. I love you.
I mean, perfect co-host.
That was first person that said they love meeting me today. I love it. Sorry, Keaton.
All right. So where do people find you? One of the best accounts around, I must say. I pick up a lot of news stories from you. You froze again.
Network matching. Please wait a moment.
All right. Quiet, robot. Come back. Come back. Is it the robot that did it? There we go. You're back. All right. So where can people find you?
Oh, you were saying something about one of the best accounts?
Yeah, you have one of the best accounts. I pick up a lot of news stories from your account.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear it. And I feed them to some people you wouldn't expect to pay attention to my accounts too. And I'm happy to be able to do that. Yeah, I'm at Anthony Zenkus on Twitter. Don't believe everything I say. And I've got a thick skin, so you can call me names. It's okay. I'm all right with it.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Professor Zenkus. Good seeing you again.
You too.
All right. That was Professor Anthony Zenkus. Let's go to a card. We'll reset and we'll be back with Nick Cruz.
If you're struggling with cravings, bloating, or stubborn weight gain, your gut health could be playing a bigger role than you think. A damaged microbiome can affect everything from inflammation and digestion to cravings and weight gain. And with today's processed foods and environmental toxins, a lot of people's digestive health is taking a hit, which is why taking care of your gut health may be more important now than ever before. That's where a fermented food called kimchi can make a real difference. Kimchi is naturally rich in over 900 probiotic strains that help support gut bacteria. Because when your gut bacteria are properly supported, your body is better able to process food efficiently, regulate cravings, support digestion, and maintain a healthier metabolism overall. Studies even show that eating kimchi can reduce your body fat by 31.8%. But supporting your gut microbiome takes consistency, and most people aren't eating kimchi every day because of the taste, smell, or the hassle that comes with it. That's why I don't eat it. But I do take, guess what? Kimchi One. That's why Brightcore created Kimchi One, delivering the benefits of fermented kimchi in a convenient capsule form to help restore your gut's natural balance every day. Because when your body is functioning properly from the inside out, everything else becomes easier. Today, you can get an exclusive offer by clicking the link below for 25% off your entire order. Or for an even better deal, call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order or free shipping. Call them now at 888-253-0418.
All right, this is Russell Dobular filling in for Jimmy Dore, who is out on the road enjoying life. Nick Cruz will be up next. He's a citizen journalist, geopolitical analyst, co-founder of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, a socialist media outlet centered on Black working class perspectives. He advocates for anti-imperialism, universal health care, and revolutionary solidarity, offering a pointed critique of mainstream politics and corporate media while promoting grassroots activism as a tool for achieving systemic change. Welcome, Nick Cruz, to the show. Yo, man, I haven't talked to you in a long time.
Yeah, man, it's good to be talking to you again. What's popping, my friends? Good to be back on JD. Good to see my friend Russell. You guys are killing the game. It's great to talk to you guys.
No, you're killing the game, man. I see you all over my Facebook feed. You're coming up all the time with your shorts.
Yeah, I've been focusing a lot on the short form content. Make sure you guys follow us.
You're good in that form. Yeah. Follow you where?
On Hotspot. We're on Instagram, Facebook, X. X is where my biggest platform is at. But Nico House, I love Nico House, man. He's a brilliant mind. He's been doing this for a long time. He's running the game at Hotspot. We have amazing journalists like David Adayan. Big shout out to my friend Proud Socialist Ryan, who's also joined us as well. So it takes a lot of work, but I enjoy the work we do at Hotspot because I get to really dive into geopolitics. And I feel like it actually helped me improve as a commentator and as a political analysis, doing all the research and all the work it takes. So make sure you guys follow us at Hotspot. Once again, it's great to be in conversation with you again, man.
Yeah, man. I've wanted to talk to you since I got back from Asia, probably more than anyone in the space.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of Asia, before we get into that, we'll get a little bit of the day's news into the can. You'll like this one. You probably saw this already. So Donald Trump today on his trip here opined about communism. The woman who asked the question, by the way, I had Malcolm here, producer here. I said, find out who that woman is, man, because I knew something was up with her. Like, that's beyond like normal CNN anti-China propaganda. Yeah, her name, I think, is Irene Tao. She works for a news organization that they claim to have editorial independence, but it's part of Falun Gong. So that's why you get the question framed like this. All right, so let's see.
You've been issuing a wake-up call to Americans at home about the dangers of communism, and now you're speaking on the world stage. What's your message to people both living under communist and socialist regimes, but also people living under democracies like in Europe and America who might not have realized how close communism has come to home?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. But look, I want to get the word out because what's forming is communism in the country. And communism's easy to sell. I would be the greatest communist in history. I'd be right up there with Lenin. I'd be as good as anybody. You've got free rent for the rest of your life. What they don't say is that you'll be living in squalor in 12 months. You've got a free house. Would anybody like to have a free house? We'll take it away from somebody. We'll give it to you. You'll have murders all over the place. Communism's a disaster. It's been proven to be for thousands of years under different names, but same thing. It's very important.
Thousands of years.
Funny. One of the reasons I do so well with Hispanic people. I set a record, Republicans. I get great numbers for the election, helped me get elected in a landslide. The Hispanics, because a lot of them came from countries that were essentially communist. You know, whether you call them radical socialist or communist is.
All right, so you get the idea. All right, so this is the main reason I went to Asia. I wanted to go to communist countries. I wanted to see, because we talk about that a lot. People are very curious about it. I felt like, well, I'm lucky enough. I don't have a family. I don't have the kind of responsibilities Keaton has. I can do it. I felt like one of us, if we can, should do it. So one of the hardest things about adjusting when I came back, I wasn't used to potholes. I wasn't used to the condition of things.
Yeah.
So I went to China, and I've traveled around the United States a fair amount, man. I'm honest. I would tell people I did not see anything like the crumbling roads, the crumbling bridges anywhere. And I was from one end of that country to the other. I was in Urumqi, man. I was in Uyghur country over there. Like if any place would be underfunded, it would be all the way over there. Nah, man, everything was pristine. I promise you. Most of the people in Cleveland would be very happy to live in Urumqi compared to what they're living in. These are the things that America is actually number one in. Healthcare, it is last among wealthy nations. Happiness, 24th. Education, 26th. Life expectancy, 46th. Free press, 57th. Climate, 57th. Social mobility, 27th. Income equality, last in the Western world. What it's number one at is imprisoning people, gun deaths, school shootings, drug deaths, medical bankruptcy, wealth inequality among wealthy nations, maternal mortality among wealthy nations, child poverty among wealthy nations, believing it's number one. But you could see what's happening now. They got they saw these DSA victories, which we'll get into, and they said, okay, this is what we're going to bear down into. We're going to play the Cold War classics, the fear of communism. Do you think they'll be able to sell that? Because as you've said many times, we've said many times, Americans are the most propagandized people on earth. You might look at it and say, that can't work. What I will say is people know when they're broke. And this is why these arguments are not working like they used to. So what do you think? Can they get traction with this?
They already lost the battle of ideas, especially when you look at the polling of the new generation, how they see through the lies about socialism. I was nervous at first when Donald Trump was making threats about communists, and then I realized that he's actually talking about Cory Booker. Like, he actually talking about Democrats. Like when you talk about communists, he's talking about Hakeem Jeffries.
Right.
That's how serious they actually are. But I'm glad that we still make them nervous. They still fear the specter of the fight and the revenge of the working class. And he has a lot of reason to be nervous, because speaking of China, you know what China does to their corrupt billionaires?
Oh, yeah.
They kill them.
Yeah. They just sentenced one to death. What did he steal? 325 million, that guy?
Yeah, so isn't it cute how in our country we have legalized bribery? We just call it lobbying. Like we call the corruption in our system, we give it official names and titles. Oh, he's a lobbyist. Like, what are you talking about? So these Epstein demons in the ruling class, they have every reason to fear us. We're not shy about what we want to do. We want maximum authoritarianism against the Epstein class. Anyone who is responsible for the massive theft of the working class in the United States, anyone responsible for war crimes overseas, we want to hold them accountable. The same way that China holds their ruling class accountable. Trump is scared because we need a Mao. Speaking of China,
right? We
need a Mao, one of the greatest men of all time, and he's the foundation in which China was built upon. It's weird when what's that? Oh, look, base wrestling.
Yo, man, this is from China.
So they just want to loot, and they just want to plunge the working class back into the age before the Soviet Union, because the capitalist retaliation to the Soviet Union was to create a middle class in the United States to compete against them. But the fall of the Soviet Union was one of the worst things that happened to the global working class, especially the American working class, because you notice that they're scaling back the gains that the working class achieved when they had to give the illusion that we have a strong working class. Now they're just creating a peasant class. They creating the working poor. But go ahead, Russ.
No. Just to clarify for anyone, I know what you're saying. Basically, that they felt like they had to give workers enough to keep them from turning towards the Soviet model, from making it sympathetic. And that once the Soviet Union fell, life has not coincidentally been degrading for workers ever since. That's the argument you're making, right?
Yeah, and that's why they panic when they see a rise in alternative economic models like what we see in China. That's what I am advocating for. We need to have a serious movement so we can start actually building and having the kind of success that they're seeing in China that the capitalist class will never allow. And as I mentioned before, Mao was the foundation of that. Like the literacy rate before Mao in China was around 15 to 20%. In only a few years, he greatly increased the literacy rate up to 75%, greatly reduced poverty, granted healthcare and housing to his people, and freed the slave. They had all these like Chinese concubines, like these slaves that was used by the warlords. Like they had no civil rights in the era of British rule, the era of the warlords. What Mao did is legendary, and Mao's specter still haunts the West because he united China in this era of corrupt warlords. Often these warlords was propped up by imperial powers. You have these barbaric, torturous warlords who was backed by French imperial power, British imperial power. Mao defeated all of them and kicked the imperial powers out of his country. And in response to that, the West waged complete economic war and blockade against China. Despite all of that, Mao greatly increased the life expectancy, built modern infrastructure, and created a blueprint for what we see in China today. And before Mao, in China, you guys know they had around 1,800 famines since the year 100 AD. You guys know that China averaged one famine every year before Mao and under British rule. Then Mao and the communists came in and they end the historical pattern of famines in China. A lot of people like to discuss the famine in the early Mao's rule, which he greatly recovered from despite many environmental disasters, the West trying to jeopardize him. The fact that they lost millions of people due to the Imperial Japan. There are a lot of factors that led to that, but he rebounded amazingly and ended the forever pattern. And that is the foundation in which China was built through this revolutionary action. And that is what Donald Trump fears. But go ahead, Russell.
Well, there's what people here don't understand. They're brainwashed into thinking that in China there's this restive population that hates their government. And I don't know, man. I trust my instincts. I got good eyes. I looked around. I asked a lot of questions in a roundabout way that people wouldn't feel like they're being confronted or cornered or anything. Yeah, that's not the case. In both Vietnam and in China, Ho Chi Minh and Mao Zedong are national heroes. This is what I will say. In China, the legacy of Mao is more complicated. Ho Chi Minh, even you got people in the south of Vietnam who are still mad that the North won, but they universally see Ho Chi Minh as the patriot who got the Western powers out of the country. Even if they fought on the other side, they admire Ho Chi Minh as a patriot. With Mao, people will say things like, yeah, this temple was closed during the Cultural Revolution under Mao, but now it's open again. So it's more complicated with him. Like, yes, they do overall admire him, and have a lot of admiration for him, but it's not as untarnished a legacy, I think, for the Chinese people with Mao. But do you want to respond to that before I go on?
Well, the Xi Jinping in China and the government, they still have a ton of symbolisms of Mao.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
And I'm not trying to pick apart what you're saying, but there are a lot of false ideas in the Chinese diaspora that Mao is a despised figure. But when you look around the world, like people in the global...
No, he's not a despised figure. I'm not saying that.
I hear you.
I'm saying the Chinese people are like, yeah, the Cultural Revolution shit was fucked up. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, and the thing about Mao and his government and
like the people who lived through it do not remember that fondly, from what I gathered off people.
Yeah, and they was clear about the mistakes that was made. Like, these are the things. Right.
That seems to be the general attitude that, like, yeah, then Deng Xiaoping came in and we kind of turned the page and corrected some errors, but Mao set us on the path. That was what I would say the overall attitude towards Mao is.
I hear you.
So it's pretty funny. Trump says that communism doesn't work anywhere, but he seems to be becoming a communist. So here he is bragging about the government muscling in on taking over 10% of Intel.
Got as a gift, another gift. I said to Intel, give the United States they needed something, they needed some help, the chip maker. I said, give the United States of America, I'll do it for you, but give the United States of America 10% of your company. He said, you have a deal. He said it so fast, I said I should have asked for more. But he said, you have a deal. And that stake is now worth $80 billion.
Okay. All right. So what do you can you imagine if Joe Biden went out there and talked about how he forced a company to let the government buy 10% of the company? And then this just dropped today, I think. Freedom Fuel has arrived. This is from the White House's account. The first Freedom Fuel Network gas station has landed in Philadelphia, lowering the price at the pump to $3.47 for our 47th president. President Trump is leading the charge to lower gas prices this summer, putting more money in your pocket. This guy, this is like Mondani, man. They're going crazy about the grocery store. They're creating government gas stations. There's a whole video with this.
I had to go back in and get my change. I thought gas was more expensive, but it's not. So thanks, Trump, for saving me some money.
We're here at the first Freedom Fuel Network gas station right here in Philadelphia, leading the charge to lower gas prices, $3.47. That's for our 47th president, President Donald J. Trump. The price of gas here is 50 cents lower than the Pennsylvania average gas price.
4th of July, the gas prices are coming down, which is great.
I am very happy about the cheap gas prices.
Happy 4th of July.
Hopefully everyone has a great holiday. Super pumped the gas prices are lowered.
I'm just grateful. Right now, we're in a difficult time in this world, but it's nice to see some stability that we can enjoy.
Definitely appreciate the lower gas prices.
Oh yeah, definitely.
When I saw it, I thought it was fake news, but I'm glad it's true. I definitely couldn't believe my eyes. When I just rolled past, I'm actually taking a trip down the shore, so I wasn't even gonna come and get the gas, but I'm glad I did, because now it just saved me a lot of money. Thanks a lot, Trump. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a good job.
Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you for helping our country.
It's President Donald J. Trump leading the charge to lower gas prices right here at Freedom Fuel Network's gas stations.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm a little messed up. Isn't that communism? Isn't that communism? The government run gas stations and the government having ownership in private corporations from I'm not going to swear this is an exact number, but the last statistic I saw, China still owns, this is a misconception that it's all just private corporations. China owns, I think, 55% of the private corporations in China. They have 55% ownership. So that is Trump basically conceding that he can't compete with communism without becoming a communist?
Yeah, they're realizing they have a failed central planning model. But it's very important to never listen to the BS that capitalists spit. They always they're actually really good at propaganda and convincing people that they believe in a free market. Like if they believe in a free market, ask them why they banned Chinese EVs.
Right.
That's not a free market principle. They never believe in free market principles from day one. What do you guys think corporate bailouts are? They choose winners and losers. The problem with the capitalist model is that they will often merge corporations. They will get rid of the middleman, like we've seen in Germany with Friedrich Merz. They used to have like capitalist puppets, but now they got Friedrich Merz directly from BlackRock. So they just got rid of that part as a whole. So we've seen a complete merging of the private industry with the public interest in order to wage class war on the working class and advance the interests of the capitalist imperialist regime. That is inherently what capitalism will always morph into. So do you want a system that only cares about the profits of the ruling class, even if it means having destabilized infrastructure, a working class that is not invested in? Or do you want a central planning model that focuses on the working class and the dictatorship of the proletariat? Why do you guys think we have a massively bloated and wasteful military industrial complex where now they are spending over $1 trillion per year, and then they get their ass whooped by Iran? They lose to pirates and Yemen. And I've been discussing on my channel that these are evidence that you guys are being grifted. They give these giant contracts to their friends, their families. So instead of investing in our communities, they essentially turn the United States to a glorified arms dealer who enrich the ruling class, who invest in ads in the corporate media, who then enrich propagandists, who then donate to politicians. It is not a coherent system. And that's why we see the ruling class have to compromise their values consistently in order to compete with countries who actually do have a coherent model and actually have a competent government. So please remember, these people are always full of shit, and they don't even believe what they claim they practice.
Well, isn't this? I mean, Germany did this too. Like, isn't this pretty typical of fascism? It's part of really the definition of fascism, where you're going to have a merger of the state and corporations on behalf of a ruling class rather than on behalf of the people. Like they're adopting some of these tactics, but for completely different purposes. It's for purposes of a corrupt oligarchic class to have complete control over the society. And at the same time, they're building out, I'm doing this after the break, the flock cameras, and we just saw that terrifying video of the robot dogs that they're mounting guns to, which you could have seen coming a mile away.
Yeah.
So now this just broke this week. Nobody can afford a house in America. And that was starting to happen in China too.
Yep.
So Xi gave a speech back in 2017. Housing should be for living in, not for speculation. And they literally made it government policy to bring down the price of housing, to collapse the bubble, and to do it in a gradual way so it wouldn't take the economy with it the way it did in the United States. So there's unusual whales. China's residential property prices have effectively dropped back to roughly 2006 levels in real terms, wiping out an estimated 18 to 20 trillion dollars in US dollars in perceived household wealth since the 2021 peak. So you can see right here, Xi gives that speech, houses for living in, not for speculation. That's the peak of the bubble, and the housing prices dropped ever since after that until you completely deflated the bubble, brought it back to 2006. So here's Maitreya Bakal. China's national bourgeoisie always knew this day would come. They knew what they were getting into. They knew who they ultimately served. They may have received that one golden star on China's national flag, but they never forgot what the large one represents. The sorest losers of China's real estate crash is the Western bourgeoisie, including firms like Blackstone. Indeed, they were some of its main targets. They spent decades investing in China's housing boom, salivating over the prospect that China's housing market would financialize, that China would ultimately do to itself what they had already done to the U.S., treat houses like a tradable commodity and benefit from the endless cycle of buying and selling, to turn people's homes into casino chips, to be endlessly bought, sold, inflated, leveraged, and over-leveraged until the end of time. Instead, they discovered the hard way who actually governs China. In all countries, the property market is an important facet of class, and almost everywhere, the wrong class wins. In China, the right one won. The state controls finance capital, not the other way around. The Western mind cannot comprehend this. This also explains why Western media and economists have been decrying China's crash so viciously. They are simply expressing the frustrations and hysteria of the class they serve, the class whose dreams now lie in ruins. That's the real crash. Yeah. And what are we doing here? This is from Sagar and Jetty. In Florida, counties are preparing for the elimination of property tax. So you're going to make the homeowners richer. Hillsborough County is going to make up the revenue by charging you money when you take your kid to the park and increasing fuel taxes while boomers occupying all the housing stock will laugh.
Crazy.
So how does this end up? How does this end up? China's got the second highest ownership in the world after, believe it or not, Kazakhstan. Number 3 is Laos, which I just visited. That surprised me too. Then Romania. Russia is, I think that's about number 7. Where are we? Between 43 and 52, right? I thought that's the American dream, owning a home. It's the American dream. Why do all these people own homes? We don't own a home. Look, Vietnam's on that list, another communist country. Laos is a communist country too. Most people don't know that. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I didn't know that either. Until I went. I didn't know until I went there. That's the price of freedom. Exactly. You're going to pay to use the public park. They have a homeowner tax deduction. They don't have a renter tax deduction, right? China said, hey, we're not going to have this. Young people are not going to be able to afford their homes. We're not going to let our society go in that direction. So in this country, do you think it's even possible to get around all the wealthy homeowners? That's why you have a homeowner's tax deduction, because they're able to leverage their political power in donations to get favorable treatment. How could you even break through to get that here, especially when Nick, you got all these brainwashed working people who are going to scream when they say, you know how much wealth that's going to take away from homeowners? That's going to hurt the workers. They're going to be like, yeah, you're going to hurt the workers. You're going to hurt the workers. How are you even going to do that in this country? How could you even get around that?
China is opening many people's eyes, because the average rent in China is around $275. 91% of millennials own their own home in China.
Yep.
But you had the freedom not to own anything in the United States. Isn't that great?
Right.
Don't you love that freedom?
You will own nothing and be angry. That's how Keaton puts it. Yeah.
So yeah, there was previous generations who was brainwashed by the landlord class, but I truly believe that this kind of stuff is changing. Because what I bring up to people is, what does freedom really mean? The freedom to be a serf? Like China, they have freedom, true freedom of movement. Are you really free? Because there was a survey I ran a long time ago where like the average working class person couldn't afford to live in like 80% of the cities of the United States. Something crazy like that. But are you really free if you don't have the right to and the freedom to afford to live in the vast majority of cities in your country? Like even among the very expensive cities, the average rent is only like $400-$500 in China. And one of the reasons why you see this, this amazing accomplishment in housing, where it was able to deflate the housing market without seeing any drastic decrease in quarterly economic growth. This is what everyone's freaking out about. Like, how the hell do you possibly accomplish this? This is economic accomplishment for the history books. But this is what happens when you have a culture in a country that is on the path of true socialism, where class antagonisms are worked out through the government, through governmental agencies and mechanisms. In the United States, class antagonisms are literally just directly one way, and that's the ruling class stomping on the workers, the landlord class becoming richer. That's why we are seeing rents drastically increase, and an entire generation give up on the concept of home ownership. Like, the idea of me ever owning a home never even crossed my mind. The millennials, and I'm a younger millennial, but especially Gen Z, that idea has been killed and has been dead, because there is no mechanism in the United States politics where class warfare works through our bourgeoisie system. This is why people call for building on revolutionary movements. Because you ask the question, like, how do we get Americans to wake up? How can we possibly break this landlord siege? Unfortunately, it takes militant class warfare and the acknowledgement that there's more of us than there are of them. Because China, they brought their landlords to heel. And I gotta do some more reading on this, but I read a little bit about it, how they bring landlords to heel in China. Like, you're only allowed to have like 2 properties, not really allowed to rent it. They got very strong regulations and practices that many people in the United States will freak out about. Like, I mean, I'm talking about like the capitalist landlord class. Right. So whenever people say, well, and this is a lot of the cope you see from the right, they're like, well, don't you know that China's capitalist now? Don't you know they're not real socialists? I'm like, okay, can we at least get to China first and then figure the rest out later? Like, China has created an amazing blueprint for humanity. And when you guys see the massive infrastructure projects that they accomplished, when you see the amount of people they lift out of poverty, when you see that the vast majority of young people in China has a positive view on the future, why don't Americans want to build that for ourselves? Like, why don't you want to compete in China, not in the capitalist sense of comparing their stocks and dividends and stuff, like compete with them, like, yeah, we uplift more people out of poverty than China. We built better infrastructure than China. Look at our high-speed rail. That's what I want to do. That's why I want to compete with China, instead of just advocating for reformism, which would never hit us to that goal and objective, which I really hope Americans get their head on straight so we can actually start building something like we see out of China, straight up.
All right. So that is perfect to bring me into the main thing that I've wanted to talk to you about since I got back.
Yeah.
You know, you take a trip like that, you can't predict what you're going to see, how it's going to impact you, how it's going to change the way you look at life, the way you look at society, the way you look at America, the way you look at your own country. Now, one thing I got from it is Americans are crazy. Like, normal people don't act like we act here. Like, really, normal people don't act like that. Like, what they teach us, that this is human nature. No, it's not. This is how humans behave under a very artificial environment where you're trained to treat everyone like a potential competitor. You're automatically gonna be aggressive. You're gonna have an aggressive posture. If people aren't trained to be that way, they default to being nice and polite. That's how most people are. Anywhere that you go in Asia, most people are very nice, very helpful, very polite towards you. That's communist, non-communist, Thailand, China, whatever. They're just very nice, very gentle, very, very kind, very decent. In Vietnam and China in particular, when I looked at what these people went through to get what they got, right, that is what has stayed with me. So I want to show you this. So this is, we know it as the Hanoi Hilton, because this is where they kept the American prisoners in North Vietnam during the Vietnam War. But as you could tell from the outside, it was built by the French to imprison the Vietnamese. So that was the guillotine. You know, they decided you were more trouble than you were worth. They would take you right out to that courtyard. That was where they would do the executions, right outside. They would take you out. This is how they would keep people chained up there.
It's crazy.
This is one of the cells You know, they'd keep you all the time. You're in the cell with your hands chained up like that. Now this is what's going on here. The dungeon was used to confine prisoners who broke the regulations of the prison. The dungeon in Hualo was hell of the hell. Dungeon was dark and narrow. Prisoners were kept separately and put in stocks and had to eat and relieve themselves on the spot. All the prisoners confined here were puffed with edema. Their eyes were clouded over, and their bodies were covered with scabies caused by the lack of light and air. So there was a prison outside of Chongqing that I didn't get to go to. I'm sure you would see similar things to what you see in Vietnam. The Kuomintang used to keep them there and torture the Chinese communists. When I saw what these people went through to achieve what they've achieved, I say, how are you going to get Americans to do that? Honestly, man. Honestly. Like, these people were ready to die. Yo, in Hualo prison there, they would have their meetings teaching each other communist theory, and they made them all share the same shit bucket. They would hide the literature in the shit bucket so they could keep training each other in communist theory.
Right.
You look at that level of toughness and dedication, how are you going to build people like that out of this country? That is something you got to be realistic about if you're going to talk about these kind of revolutionary things. Now, for me, that definitely, I don't know if this changed so much, and I don't think you really disagree with this. I think you got a guy like Mamdani who goes ahead and does a rent freeze or a pied-à-terre tax. I think that is good for people who want to push more radical politics, because you want to show people that something that is associated with socialism or leftism made their lives better. I think that's going to make them more open to pitching that. And then, of course, you talk about the genocide of Gaza. I mean, you look at what those people are suffering. I can't imagine I'm ever going to go out and tell people go volunteer for a Democrat again. I can't see it happening. But when there are elections in my city, do I go and vote for someone like Mamdani who refuses to not call Israel an apartheid state? Sure. Am I going to say, yo, go volunteer, Mamdani's having an event? No.
Yeah.
And part of the reason, especially having seen that coming back, I'm like, you know, I can't really advocate for some kind of an accelerationism when you got a population that can't do that. They're just not gonna. So at that point, you have a social collapse. The only person who's gonna be able to take advantage of that is Peter Thiel, because you don't have a bunch of Vietnamese. The Vietnamese people were the most beautiful people I ever met. It's unbelievable how forgiving they are.
Right.
You go there, man, you still see people walking around with no arms, literally walking around with no arms from that war, still to this day. And you ask them across the board, you ask Vietnamese people what they think of Americans. They say, we're all friends now. That was the past. We don't forget, but it's part of our culture. You have to forgive. You have to move on. You don't hold on to these things. The combination of kindness, and you can even now sense the toughness of those people. I asked younger Vietnamese how they felt about the government, and they said, we really like the government. We feel like we got to work with the government to make Vietnam better for our parents and grandparents who lived through the bad times. That was what they called the bad times, the war, the colonization. So you, as I don't want to speak for you, Marxist-Leninist, you would call yourself, I think?
Pretty accurate.
So how do you see going forward, given everything I'm saying, and, you know, say if you disagree with anything I said, say so. How do you go forward with these movements in America? And do you support any kind of harm reduction, like a rent freeze from a person like Mamdani, who's a Democrat?
I remember I was talking to one of my Chinese friends, and he was explaining how he's excited about a lot of people in the West who wants to move to China, because that's it's a joke I make on my channel all the time. Like, man, I need to do the Lenin model when I go away from the empire and try to plan the revolution on the outside. But China, there are people who have a message for, and they're very welcoming to people who want to visit. They offer visa free to a ton of different countries. But my friend was advocating. He was like, you guys have to understand that we went through centuries of humiliation.
Right.
Like, one of the reasons why we have pride in our country is because our ancestors fought and died to create the infrastructure where we are allowed to benefit from. And now we went from being humiliated and a broken people to now a country that everyone wants to travel to, that is now respected. And that's something that the Chinese people have great pride in, and many people can't begin to reconcile with. So what I advocate for people is, don't you want your legacy to be that? Don't you have children? Don't you have people in your younger generations that you look to? And don't you have a sense of strong obligation, a feeling that you have to build something that will make the next generation better? That's why I advocate for. That's why I dream for. And the people I want to reach. Can you talk about how you reach these American people? Because there's a lot of people in my family don't even vote. I have people in my family who have medical bankruptcies. These are the things that radicalized me. Like, I wasn't even radicalized with theory. I was radicalized seeing a lot of my friends, my homeboys. I remember I had a conversation with my friend a long time ago, because he was the hardest working dude that you will ever see. Like, he was working 2 jobs. He was also hustling on the side. I never seen him there. I offered him a place to stay because he was struggling. And this is despite him working 2 jobs. He always tired. And I had a conversation where he blamed himself, like, Nick, I feel like I'm cursed, man. No matter what I do, there's nothing I can get ahead. And it was a very depressing conversation. And I had to tell him, man, bro, you are one of the hardest workers I know. How can you blame yourself? This is a systemic problem. So these are the people who are left behind with these incrementalist projects, because they have long since gave up on the political system.
Right.
I just have a lot of people in my family that's apolitical, and it's very interesting because they will now bring up politics to me because they see my hotspot videos on their Facebook feed. They're like, damn, Nick, I never know you can cover politics like this. So, like, for example, I was talking to my sister, who she would never be able to explain, like, the complexities between economic systems and the corruption of United States lobbying. But she told me the one reason why she's not into politics, because she always knew it was bullshit. She listened to all the politicians. She knows they're all full of shit. And she's not a political head. These are just the feelings that the vast majority of the American people feel. Always cringe when MAGA types and Democrats that we are half of the country. No, you guys are 1/4 at best on a good day. Right. Sure. I would say 1/5 to be clear. So the very hard task that we have, and I failed on this many times before. I had a lot of failures. I tried to organize the left, which is a nightmare. By the way, it's a nightmare, but we're trying at RBN. We haven't been successful. We're trying to build this movement that we know is necessary, but those people are there. We have to find a way to mobilize the people who don't even believe in the legitimacy of the 2-party system. I know Democrats use this as a very dishonest attack on DSA politicians, which I'm not using it in this way, because they're always like, well, don't you know that DSA people are supported by rich white suburbanites? Well, they're kind of being dishonest on that, but there's some truth in there, where the people who are truly hurt by our American system, they don't even have the time or energy to invest in the Mamdani. These are the people who not even invested in the system. So we had to find a way to reach them. And that's what we at RBN have been pondering. And that's why I'm very loud in my critiques of Zoran and the DSA politicians. But you guys know, I never use my platform to punch down. And I don't shame people. I make my arguments loud and aggressively, and people feel defensive when they hear it, and they feel like they have to apologize to their vote to me. But I view that as a failing of us, of revolutionaries, not to provide the people in New York with a different alternative than a Zoran Mamdani, than a DSA. And that's what I want to spend my time focusing on, building an alternative, giving people a chance to build our own movement where we can hold our own people accountable. Because Zohran Mamdani, don't get twisted, he's a fantastic manager of capitalism. he's probably the best gift that the establishment could possibly ask for. An amazing pressure release valve in this moment where people was beginning to mass exit the Democratic Party. In a time where people was beginning to question the ruling class, you have Zohran Mamdani that is here to swoop in to save the massively unpopular Hakeem Jeffries. And also to put a lot of people in a tranquilizing state where they feel like they're actually winning. That was the whole point. Instead of there being this anger where you see the genocidal Israeli regime get everything they want, they needed this pressure release. Someone who is willing to criticize Israel publicly, but also materially support them when it actually matters. Like, for example, when he banned breaking a campaign promise, protests of a genocidal synagogue who was selling off Palestinian land. And remember, guys, in this moment where a lot of people were doing videos about Zionists being owned, isn't it? The Zionists are owned, the Zionists are melting down over Zohran Mamdani. That's about pressure releasing. They're trying to give you a sense that you are accomplishing something, that there's not action that need to be taken. Fam, 1/5 of the West Bank is gone, and they're going to continue. So in this era where Israel voted to annex the West Bank, where they're engaging in mass torture and slaughtering of Palestinian people in the West Bank, you have the anti-Zionist movement in the United States just celebrating, just going to brunch and propping up a guy who is materially facilitating and shielding the people who are selling our Palestinian land. And these are the critiques I bring up because I want people to become activated and realize what's really at stake. And even though these managers of capitalism, it's important to help ease the pain that a lot of people are feeling in the working class, they still play a very, very important part for the establishment in order to dull revolutionary energy. And that is exactly what happened. Instead of actually having a true outside movement that can put real pressure on the establishment, we have someone who's here to do propaganda, here to uplift and launder the reputation of people like Kathleen Hochul, of Hakeem Jeffries, and support the Democratic Party, which I don't think we need that in the moment. So don't get me twisted, though. I'm not attacking anyone who support Mamdani. Like, there are a lot of people on DSA who means well. It just, with my platform, I want to make our moral differences clear and to provide an alternative. And I'll say this last thing, I'll let you chime in, because
go ahead.
As like we were speaking about Mao before, when they had the revolution, not every single peasant was versed in communist theory. You think they all was versed in communist theory? It's our job to lead the working class in the right position. If I hear one more person say shift the Overton window to the left, I'm gonna slap them in the face. I'm tired.
Shift over what?
Shift the Overton window. I'm tired of that term. I'm tired of the term Overton window. The American people already deeply distrust the institutions. Congress has a 10% approval rating. The American people are already against the Israeli regime. The American people have supported healthcare. We need to lead them in a direction where we can actually get that, instead of voting for House speakers and blocking the votes for Medicare fraud, for example. So I strongly disagree. And this is my real last statement here. I disagree morally as a peace activist with the trade-off that we will support imperialist talking points. We will support NATO. We will condemn Cuba. We will condemn Venezuela. We will condemn Hamas. We will condemn resistance fighters, just so we'll get like free buses, just so we can get some welfare programs. Once again, I'm not knocking people. I know we have a very hard choice, but that's what I use my platform for, to point out these moral differences between us and them. And that's just another reason why we need to build. I know that was a long spill.
No.
We're just scratching the surface here.
Oh, man. Yeah, you were invited on for an interview. You're here to talk. All right. Well, I looked into this with Mamdani because I saw a lot of people saying this. He actually vetoed an earlier bill on the synagogues that actually did ban it. He agreed to a bill that forbid what was already policy, that you can't block the entrance, which was not actually a change in the policy. You know, Keaton, we've talked about this on the show, and I think he's right in the way he lays out Mamdani as, look, man, the guy's a politician. Like, that's a very different position from an. That's what I said about him the one time I actually physically met him. He was at a Tesla protest that I went to stream. And this is when he was at like 5% in the polls. So he was willing to talk to me then. So I came away. I asked him a question about how do you get people who got burned by Sanders to support you? And he completely ducked the whole question. And I said, when I came away, the impression I got of him, he's a politician. And he is. He is. I think it's very difficult. And this is really what I'm saying in terms of the trip that I took and the perspective it gave me. I can't tell people don't take the rent freeze when there is nothing feasible coming behind that. Now, building out a movement, I agree. That's what the Vietnamese did. They did it for 100 years. 100 years. This didn't start when America showed up. This goes back to the French. And actually, when you see how they frame their struggle against colonialism,
right,
America is the final act. It's the final boss in the game. For them, most of that history is about other countries occupying them, particularly France. It's mostly about, they mostly talk about France. America is like the cherry on the whipped cream. That was like the last thing that they had to get past to get their country for themselves. So yes, the kind of organizing you're talking about, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you got to do that in the first place. Otherwise, what are you telling people not to take these things that are going to help their lives for? You know, look, I am fortunate enough. Honestly, I've been living in the same building for 20 years because we have rent stabilization in New York. My rent is so far below market rent. I'm not going to go broke without a rent freeze. But I don't have kids, man. I don't have a family. I'm not in that position. It's not about me. It honestly isn't. Like, most of the things I advocate for, I don't really need. Like, we all need healthcare, right? I mean, we all need that. But a lot of these kinds of things, like, am I really worried I'm going to be homeless? No, but I'm thinking about the people who are going to be homeless. Like, what am I telling them to turn that down for? For a revolution that is decades away. Decades away. Like, yeah, man, when we went out to St. Louis to document what the Uhurus are doing, that's amazing. Like, that's amazing work. Like, that, of course, it's worth supporting, it's worth organizing, and it's worth trying to build that framework to undermine the system, like the Vietnamese did.
Right.
But they didn't do that overnight. That took a lot. That, for them, that was a century. That was like a century of training people in communist theory and communist thinking. Having gone and seen communism at work, yeah, I pretty much got converted over to, I did.
Yeah.
At the same time, it gave me a realistic perspective on what you would need to do to get that in America. And I think activists should work towards that. Having seen it in action, I do. It would be just like there. It's socialism with Chinese characteristics. It would be different here. The way they do it in China, I'll tell you right now, it wouldn't work here. We're a different people. We're a very different
It
culture.
would take a different approach.
You'd have to take a different approach. Their version is very Confucian, and they lived with that system for over 1,000 years. They adopted that basic way of doing things to a communist theory. So the population already was kind of used to the way that they're approaching government and its relationship to people. You couldn't do it that way here. You'd have to figure that out. That's part of what revolutionaries like yourself have got to figure out. Like, how do you adopt that to the American model? But you got to do what they did. They built cells and they educated for 100 freaking years. Now, I'm not saying 100 years. I think things move faster now. They're starting from a kind of peasant society where most people are illiterate when they're starting to try to educate people in communism. We're not coming from that position, but it ain't going to happen tomorrow. So final question. So given that, how do you feel about these DSA candidates? You know, the Daria Lizzo, who was, you know, a protester at Columbia. Valdez is actually speaking against funding for Ukraine. And Daria Lizzo, it seems like she might go that way. So how do you, like, what would you do if you lived here? Would you vote for them?
That's a good question, because people always say we are extremely far away from revolution. And that's why I advocate for the action I do, because where do you guys think a revolution spawns from? Like, where does it come from? It doesn't come from a membrane from another reality and arriving society. We are the revolution. So that's all I advocate for. That's why you wouldn't see me go after you, because you're not a Democratic Party sheepdog. Because I've seen you support Shama Sawant. I've seen you support Joe Stein, the Green Party. I believe, I don't want to misspeak for you, but I've seen you support people outside of duopoly.
Yeah, well, Jose too.
Yeah, so
I mean, the only people we've endorsed are not Democrats. We haven't endorsed any Democrat.
Absolutely. So that's why there's no problem with what you are doing. What I have problems with are people who only engage in Democratic Party interestism.
Right.
Because please explain to me why people in DSA are not actively supporting Shama Sawant, who is running the genocidal monster in Adam Smith. So regarding to your question, it really depends on the context. Like, because if I was in New York, I probably would have been kicked out of DSA. I probably would have joined DSA, would have got kicked out immediately. But once again, it really depends on the context. Like, for example, I could have seen myself voting for Cori Bush the first time. I don't really see myself, if I was in St. Louis, voting for her again, because I don't.
Right.
I think I find her votes for the Nazis in Ukraine to be very deplorable. And whenever I bring up this stuff, they're like, Nick, don't you know that the American people don't care about geopolitics like that? And I'm like, sir, I am an American people. This is what I care about. And this is what I'm trying to get people to care about, because all these issues are inherently connected. And it's more than just a strategy difference. And that's why my criticisms are extremely scathing. That's why I had Ro Khanna stuttering like a child when he came on my show, because they can't reconcile their politics with me. I'm sorry, but I do find it morally reprehensible to be supportive of NATO. That's why Dara Liza is very interesting to watch for me, because Dara Liza, Javier, I don't know her last name, but
Xavier.
So she's one of the most impressive progressive Democrats that was elected, because she was one of the few people on the left that was critical of the Ukraine proxy war. But you guys see how quickly she deleted all her tweets. She apologized for her previous actions. So that's a bad sign. Right. So what happens when you get elected?
And she apologized for saying fuck Kamala.
It's not a good sign. So we will see what happens when she gets elected, and will she bow to the establishment? So it's not about, like, Nick, will you support DSA? I don't trust them, because we've seen what happens when you guys get power. You guys won't fight your party to fight for Medicare for all. You will support Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries. And when you guys say you support Palestine, this is what, once again, I have to correct the record on my platform. People can make whatever decision they make, but I believe that these details are important, because now we're in a situation where Israel is extremely, is an issue that many Americans really care about. So now we're seeing the professional managerial class and liberal Zionists use that issue and kind of dumb it down. And they use it to help get themselves elected, because once again, they all support NATO. Like, what do you mean you support NATO? Ilhan Omar poses with these Azov Nazis. So that alone is a red line. But what is NATO responsible for? You have Mark Rutte, who just admitted that NATO played a crucial part in the bombing of Iran. They are an instrument used to uphold the United States imperialism. NATO countries are the one who provided aid to Israel as they slaughtered Palestinians, refused to put sanctions on them as they annexed the West Bank. NATO is also full of countries like the UK and many others who provide weapons to the UAE. What do the UAE use the weapons for? They use it to fund genocide in Sudan.
Yep.
So when I'm looking at these people, like, it's easy to say free Palestine. That's easy to do. But your politics is incoherent. your politics is inherently empowering the Israeli regime. Like Mamdani's wife, for example, she supported Free Syria. She supported the head choppers in Syria. Now Donald Trump is talking about using Syria to fight Hezbollah in Lebanon. So I know there's a lot of dumbing down on this issue. And what I'm going to use my platform for, and I can only explain my position, I'm going to use my platform to educate people in the Palestine movement while these moves by the professional managerial class undermines the Palestine resistance and the Palestine struggle. That's why it's crucial that they get that right. If you believe that these are useful trade-offs, if you want to overlook these differences to get welfare programs, that's okay. But I'm not going to use my platform to ignore these very important issues, especially considering I cover geopolitics. Like, that's kind of what I do. That's what we do at Hotspot. So I'm here to remind people how, if you guys think that these people are good on Palestine, there's a reason why they're allowed to exist. Because they will also condemn BDS. They would support Mossad talking points about the Iranian regime murdering thousands of their people. This is what Zoran said. Like, Zoran gets away with stuff that AOC would never get away with. You know, like AOC would get crucified for doing the shit that Zoran did, but he gets away with it for some reason. And people are like, Nick, well, he's a mayor. Well, stop chiming in on this stuff. Why are you protecting Hakeem Jeffries and natural figures? So what I'm here to do is to be the person who point out these differences. And then people who support these politicians, they can use that to hold them accountable and make them better. It's a win-win. Use my pressure, because in a hypothetical scenario, and I explained this many times before, in a hypothetical scenario where I was going to vote for a politician, I would take that shit to my grave. I wouldn't even say shit until the day of the election. You consistently hold these people accountable. You're trying to make keep them morally consistent. What I see is celebrity worship. What I see, and this, I don't think you're responsible for this, but there are a lot of people who view like Zoran as a cult. The same way they simp over AOC. There's like
man. I posted a video of that on my travel channel. They freaking they're selling. I've never seen this in my life. I'm a native New Yorker. They're selling Zoran merch on Union Square. I've never seen that in my life, man. And they're doing a brisk business. It was like a quiet day. I was interviewing the guy, and like 3 people came by to buy his shirt in like 10 minutes.
He's a great politician, guys. Like, he's the best manager of capitalism. I'm not even saying that as a shade. And I explain it, and not even personal. I'm sure he's a great guy to hang out with, probably. Like if you imagine if you were sitting next to Zoran in the New York Knicks game, that probably would be a fun time. It's not personal, but politics is a real serious game. And I want people I just simply want them to get these issues right. And I need people to, and one of the reasons I point out these differences is to help spur people to organize on their own, to realize that, hey, man, we can do better. Like, Zoran doing great. All the progressive politicians are great, but I believe in the potential of the working class. Well, I truly do believe we can do better. So if you support Zoran, if you like them, I'm not here to punt down. I'm not here to attack these people. I'm here to remind people that I believe that we can do better. I really do believe in the potential of the working class. And the reason why third-party movements fail is because Americans are mostly lazy, who just expect a spontaneous revolution will pop off. I am not one of the people that believe a spontaneous revolution will pop off. It takes everyone doing their work and doing what they can do. And that's what I'm trying my best for. I'm not great at it. I'm not saying that I'm the next Malcolm X or anything, but imagine if everyone who had a nihilistic approach, where they feel like the only option they have is to put blind trust in politicians. Imagine if they did what they could for a revolutionary party. That's what the theme I want to remind people. We have the power. You can choose to either sit out of the game and just trust the Zoran Mamdani, or you can get in the game and help build this movement, which, once again, I've seen you help prop up third-party candidates, and that's what I want to see. Like, do whatever you think in your personal life can help you shield from the pains of capitalism, but please keep your head on straight and remember who's our real class enemy. I think there are a lot of people who forget that because of these tranquilizing drugs. And that's mostly kind of my position. Hopefully I'm summing it up well here for you guys to understand. But I'm just here to spur revolutionary action and let people know that we have better options and we could do better, even than the best among them, like Zoran Mamdani. That's just my thoughts.
All right, man. One last question, because while I got you here, I got to ask you this. So I'm reading, I'm actually having him on the 29th, the author, Joel Whitney. He wrote a book called Finks. that I already knew some of this. Really, my audience put me on to the Congress of Cultural Freedom and that history of them manipulating culture and the arts to support an anti-communist agenda going back to the Cold War. This book really focuses on how the CIA was funding all of these literary magazines in the 50s. And it's really amazing when you look at what they did.
Right.
Because basically they created the MSNBC tactic back in the 50s. They realized the McCarthy thing, it's too crude. The wealthy professional class people are not going to go for that. That's for the beer drinkers, right? We need an anti-communism that the academics and the PMCs are going to go for. So they got a bunch of NYU professors and they formed, I can't remember what it was called, but they formed a group whose job it was to go debate communists and essentially rule them out of bounds for the more upper middle class types. Now, when you watch what Mika Brzezinski does, she's a modern version of that. And I'm sure they're all working for the intelligence services, just like these people were. They never stopped doing it. Now, Richard Wright actually worked for the CIA for a while. A lot of these writers were recruited by the CIA. And he quit. And he said, this is back in the 50s. He said, every left organization has been created by intelligence services, and they use it to round up all the left in one place where they can keep an eye on them. So that, to me, is another level. I said this straight to Jill Stein. Like, I'm not throwing shade on her. When I interviewed her when we were both in Chicago, I said, what do you do about infiltration? Because it's so obvious to me that all of these left movements are infiltrated. It's so obvious. You can't tell me in a country with over 300 million people, you can't find effective leftists. You can't tell me they don't exist. So that tells me they're being undermined. So that's the fear too. Like Nick, you build up a nationwide movement like that, you know the CIA and the FBI are going to send people right into your organization.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do about that?
Yeah, for one, you got to understand that that's even a problem, because a lot of these liberal organizations, they will call you a conspiracy theorist if you mention how governments, they don't even acknowledge the problem, which is why there's a problem in the first place. You know that DSA don't acknowledge this as a problem. This is the core problem with DSA. You guys know they allow anyone to join because they're like, we can't eject party members, that will be authoritarianism. That's asking for your organization to be hijacked. So they got this thing they call the DSA right. Have you seen this, Russell? They said, well, yeah, we got people on the DSA right. These are the people who voted to on the DSA line where they said they will support Israel's right to exist, and that's why a lot of people call them a Zionist organization, because a lot of Zionists infiltrated them. They had people like Brad Lander. Brad Lander quit the DSA, the guy who just won his election. He quit DSA after October 7th because he called them a group of anti-Semites. And then DSA as an organization later then embraced him, the guy who called them anti-Semites. So if you was to create a left organization, like if the CIA was going to create a left organization, for example, if people wanted to create a left organization that's inherently ineffective, they have DSA. That's right out of their handbook. And the DSA started as an organization to push the Vietnam War, to get leftists to support the Vietnam War. They existed as an organization to.
Is that true? I didn't realize they went back that far. Yeah.
No, they are a 40+ year organization. That's why it's weird when people pretend they're new. Like these are not the first elections that they won. People are like, oh my God, yes, they won elections. They win elections. The problem is what happens after that. They still haven't expelled AOC for a vote supporting the Iron Dome, for her rejecting their own strategy of supporting primary challenges, because there's no party enforcement. There's no real line. There's no that's why they have a DSA right. That's the kind of organization that you create if you're begging to be infiltrated. So every movement is susceptible to that. You got to at least acknowledge that as a problem, which they don't even do that. You got to have. I learned this through my failures with RBN as well. I learned this through my own organizing. That you gotta drive a hard ideological line. You gotta make sure that you guys are all on the same page. You guys are all in tune in class warfare, and that's why entryism inherently fails. So we will see with the new crop of politicians. That's why everyone's celebrating right now. And I'm like, fam, I'm sorry to be the spoiler here, but winning the election is not the big part. The big part is what you do after that. You guys won plenty of elections. What happened to Maxwell Frost? You know, they don't even talk about him anymore. He sold out fast as hell. Name one DSA or one progressive Democrat that held the line against the establishment in such a way that they was expelled from the party. It never happened, and it never will. They will always fall with the Democratic Party line because that's what happens when you don't build your own movement. So that's why I want the left in the United States to do. That's what I want to see happen.
Nick, man, thank you for being so generous with your time. It's good to see you, man. It's been too long.
Yeah, it's great to be in conversation with you. You guys are killing the game. And one thing I always got to say, please don't fall into political nihilism. Like that, we have one life, and the goal that we should have is to advance humanity into the future. That is what socialists want. The ruling class, they want humanity to descend into barbarism, to continue the expansion of the ill-gotten means. We can't give into nihilism. We have to continue to organize, trust our neighbors, build with our neighbors, and mutual aid societies is a big part of that. Because I know we were talking about how what about people needs right now? That's a big part of it. Showing up for your neighbors, creating mutual aid societies. We have our Palestinian brothers and sisters who are struggling right now, which is why a big focus of RBN and what we're doing right now is fundraising for Gaza funds. So we have our merch store, RBN. I don't even make any money.
Yeah. Where can people find you? How can people support what you're doing?
Yeah. You can find me on Nick Cruz. I stream on YouTube, also on Hotspot. We also raise money for Palestinian funds. Once again, I don't make any money off any of the merch I sell. It's just
I know you, man.
Money for Palestine. If you don't want a shirt, donate to Palestine. It's just if you want a shirt and you want to donate to Palestine, that's what it's for. But that's what we need to be here. We need to be here for our neighbors.
Where do they find that? How do they donate to that?
Yeah, Bonfire RBN Shop. We link it on our channel. You subscribe to us on Nick Cruz on YouTube. Also, Revolutionary Blackout, where Rome streams as well. We're still active, and that's just our main goal right now. Make sure you subscribe to my channel on YouTube, and I also tweet it out all the time. Socialist MMA. Make sure you guys follow me. I stream about 2-3 times a week, and I focus heavily on short form content at Hotspot. But either way, whether you support my mutual aid, it doesn't support something. Please, we need as much aid to our Palestinian brothers and sisters as possible. That's why I want to heavily promote. So thank you for having me on, Russ. I love the work that you guys do. I appreciate being in dialogue with you.
It's mutual, man. Let's we got to do a post-duopoly soon, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'm down. I'm definitely down.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Guys. Thank you. All right. That was the great Nick Cruz. I know a lot of you are probably already familiar with his work. If you're not, definitely check him out. Oh, what just happened? Oh, hang on. There we go. Okay, so we're going to read some super chats before we go over to Rumble. I have been wanting to have that conversation with Nick for months, literally for months. I've been back from Asia for 2 months. All right, so Pirate Justin, spend American tax money on Americans, anti-Semite. Yep. Jimmy Dore, friend of show Jimmy. Is this the actual Jimmy Dore or someone posing as Jimmy Dore? What do you call a system that takes the richest country in the world and renders half its citizens unable to afford a $1,000 emergency? A failed system. That is something we can all agree on. Eric Rousseau, what's up, man? Who's worse, Goyams or Muggles? Both are victims of supremacist ideology. You're right, man. Eric Rousseau, will I be subjected to some MK Derp today? I believe so. I believe I saw Mr. Derp there logging in. Roger Meadow, time for another Force the Vote, baby. I got a list I'm presenting to Daria Liza when I get on the Zoom with her Friday. All right, go for it. Roger Meadows, Zenkus Cash Patel is from Garden City. Is he? Robert Kalalian, for those who haven't figured out how this works by now, power corrupts absolutely. It doesn't matter who or which party, it is the only way to hold their feet to the fire, like democracy, is fix the MSM. You know, I went pretty. I bore down pretty deep on the China stuff with Nick. I mean, that is very interesting what they've done there. It's basically they have elections. If you're a communist, you have to be trained in that way of thinking. So it's interesting the way they've kind of approached that question of power corrupting. And again, that goes back to Confucianism, the idea that you're going to have rule by the wise. Roger Meadows, we need to run indies for New York State legislature. Who will use leverage to force a vote on making New York a citizen ballot measure amendment state? We get it done ourselves. Eric Rousseau, does this mean the Democrats are bringing back Mary censorship poppers? Of course they are. Of course they are. I've been saying the whole thing, the whole time, as the Republicans have been lighting the country on fire and guaranteeing an enormous midterm backlash. Remember the cancel pigs? They're coming back. They're gonna be back. Nina Kant, I've been saying lower rent prices back to the last time and raise minimum wage because this is bullshit. Yep. T-Bone, loving the lineup of guests you bring on, Russ. Each time you guest host, DD rocks. Yes. Well, that's one of the awesome things about the opportunity Jimmy gives me to come on here. I get to talk to some amazing people and hopefully expose them to a wider audience. EO Shush, Russ, with your commie propaganda. We had communism for 4 years under Biden, and even President Xi in China told Trump America was dead and is now the hottest country in the world. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, if he said that, he went back and laughed with his friends over drinks later on. You believe he believed that? Nocturnal Human. Now you can get to work for just half of your paycheck when you fill up at the Goy station. Dobther, middle class is a wage earner who's capable of purchasing their own home out of those wages, letting them in on the economic growth capital that working class have none of. You see a lot of different definitions of what constitutes working class. Steve Bertram, all the same affordability problems exist in China that exist in the West. Young people absolutely cannot afford to buy a house or start families, and yet 95% of people own their homes. So that literally cannot be true. I actually spoke to a guy in China who moved back from Canada because wage relative to purchasing power, he came out ahead in China. James Holmes, China never built Epstein Island, bunch of losers. The gorilla, that's why they had all that money to put into infrastructure. They weren't spending it on preteen girls. The gorilla, if Americans saw China on the ground, their brains will break. In the US, we are a speculative economy, a fire economy, finance, insurance, and real estate. We have no industry. Our manufacturing is a cottage industry to finance. Yep. It did blow my mind. It blows everybody who goes to China, mind blown. Like, yeah, compared to America, you want to appreciate how much you're being ripped off? Go to China if you can. You'll never see America the same way again. Nina Kant, land of the free, most junk fees society on earth, freedom. Yeah, that seems to be how they define it. And final batch, Michael Buffalo, cap inheritance at 10 million and disperse the rest to pay off the national debt, bolster SSI, and house the homeless. Billionaires would drop like flies and we could all be free again. Well, if we eat just one billionaire, like the shirt says. Hang on, is that the last one? No, that can't be the last one. Hang on, this isn't coming in properly. There we go. Roger Meadows. The reason China is able to improve on their infrastructure is due to them laxing their environmental regulations. This encroachment on the natural world led to a decaying ecosystem. As a result, they're now in an environmental crisis. Listen, man, I appreciate you, but have you been there? Have you ever been? Have you ever been? No, in all seriousness, man. I did a video about this when I was in one of the China train stations. China went through a phase, just like we did, just like Europe did, where the energy was very dirty Beijing was kind of famous for having this smog. And then they took the increase in wealth and productivity that they had and put it into clean energy. Now, when you go through China, the air's pretty good, and you see solar farms and windmills everywhere. You know where you don't see that? America. America is actually in an environmental crisis where you can't get clean water all over the country because they won't invest in any of the infrastructure. You know what they have outside of New Orleans? They got a place called Cancer Alley. Cancer Alley. Not coincidentally, most of the people who live there are black, not surprisingly. And that is because they let these corporations just build chemical plants right next to where people live, and they all get cancer. So I would worry a little more about that problem here than in China. Okay. Roger Meadows, let's not forget the labor exploitation they do of black people in Africa, including children, for those minerals. So they're just as imperialistic. Now, Roger, again, man, I appreciate you throwing some money in the till here. Are you honestly going to start talking about the exploitation of Africans as an argument against China as an American? Are you fucking joking me? We did a story not too long ago about how in the Congo they were talking about bringing legal action against Apple for buying up stolen minerals and conflict minerals. So yeah. Nick effing gets it. Thanks for having him from 31 Joseph. It was honestly, man, that is the person I most wanted to have a conversation with since I got back. Roger Meadows, Nick's MO is a CBI state. Organizing your state around citizen-initiated constitutional amendments, movements begin in the states. I don't think he'd be against that, actually. JB, brilliant guest, Russ. I love Nick's perspective. So do I. All right. Those are all of our super chats. We are going to go over to Rumble. I believe we're going to be joined by Kerp. We got 3 segments. We're going to do Tyler Robinson. We're going to do Maha Betrayed. And we're going to do a short piece on the Flock Camera Rebellion. All right. We'll see you over there.